Okay, so renting, right. It can feel like you're just throwing money away every month.
Yeah,
You're
totally.
not building equity and you're at the mercy of your landlord.
Ugh, tell me about it.
No wonder so many of us renters dream of owning a place.
It's the dream, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of what we're diving into today.
Oh, okay, cool.
We're going to be looking at a realtor named Manoj Atri,
Okay. Yeah.
and he has this whole stop renting philosophy.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw his website and all that.
You shared it with me, actually, and you specifically wanted to understand his whole stop renting and start owning campaign, right?
Yeah, like especially his take on the Toronto condo market.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm renting right now and thinking about buying,
Yeah,
but I want to make sure I'm making a smart move,
totally.
especially with all this talk about the market cooling down.
It's a smart approach.
Yeah.
So let's kind of unpack Manoj's perspective first.
Okay.
He basically is saying, stop throwing money away on rent and invest in your future by owning a home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He's all about building equity and having control over your living space,
You
right?
are-
It's like a long-term investment.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
We've got some recent news that paints a different picture of the market.
Oh.
So StatsCan reported this 1.2% drop in new home prices in London, Ontario over the past year.
Mm.
And Better Dwelling is saying that Toronto condo prices just had one of their worst months on record.
What?
Yeah, new home sales in Toronto were down in September too.
Oh, wow.
So what's going on there?
Well, those headlines,
Yeah.
they can be a little intimidating when you're thinking about buying.
For sure.
But what's interesting is that these trends are largely driven by rising interest rates.
Oh,
So the Bank of Canada has been trying to cool inflation,
right.
and that's made borrowing more expensive, right?
Yeah.
So as a result, there are fewer people rushing to buy homes, which actually gives buyers like you more negotiating power.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Totally.
Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive,
Right.
but it also means there's less competition and potentially better deals out there.
Exactly. It's
Right.
creating a more balanced market.
Right. So how does this all connect back to Manoj's advice?
Okay.
And specifically, his take on the Toronto condo market.
Yeah.
He has a whole newsletter article dedicated to that, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. And it's really interesting. He highlights some pretty significant price drops in specific condo segments.
Okay. Like what?
Okay, so he points out that condos built in the last 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
they haven't seen much of a price decrease.
Okay.
But older condos, those have dropped by about 15% in the last 2 years.
Hold on. So newer condos are holding their value better than older ones.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so Manoj points out that new builds are usually more desirable because they have modern amenities,
Okay.
updated features, and they just haven't had as much wear and tear. Right, right. And plus, with rising construction costs,
Yeah.
the price of new builds is going up,
Okay.
which might be helping to prop up those prices.
That makes sense. So even within the condo market, there are these like micro trends happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Is Manoj acknowledging that in his newsletter? Like, does he address whether his stop renting advice still holds up when the market is cooling down and some segments are being hit harder than others?
Well, he doesn't explicitly say, yes, buy now, even with these price drops in the newsletter.
Okay.
But his overall message is that any time is a good time to stop renting and start owning.
Okay.
He's really focused on the long-term benefits of homeownership,
Wow.
like building equity, having a place that's truly yours.
Okay, so he's taking the long view.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily saying jump into the market right now no matter what.
Right.
More like, if you're thinking about homeownership, it's always better to start sooner rather than later. Okay, I get that. But I can't help but wonder, are there any downsides to jumping into homeownership right now?
Oh, yeah.
Especially if interest rates are still high.
Yeah, you're right to be thinking about that.
Yeah.
There are definitely some risks to consider.
Okay.
Remember that article we came across about interest rate differential?
Oh, yeah. IRD penalties.
Yes, IRD penalties.
That was kind of a head scratcher.
It is.
Can you remind me what those are again?
Yeah, so let's say you get a 5-year fixed mortgage at today's rates, but
Mhm.
then rates drop significantly in a couple of years.
Okay.
If you want to break your mortgage to refinance at that lower rate,
Yeah.
you could get hit with a hefty IRD penalty by the lender.
Really?
Yeah,
Ouch.
and those penalties can be thousands of dollars,
Wow.
depending on how much is left on your mortgage.
Yikes. So even if rates go down, I might not be able to take advantage of them without getting penalized.
Exactly.
That's something to really think about.
It is a big risk factor to weigh. You really need to understand the terms of your mortgage before you commit to anything.
Yeah, okay, noted. I'm going to add research IRD penalties to my to-do list.
Good idea.
What other risks should I be aware of?
Let's see.
We did come across some other news articles that hinted at potential downsides to homeownership.
We did. Remember the one about Airbnb hosts?
Oh, yeah?
They could potentially face a 13% tax when they sell
Wait, seriously?
if they frequently rent out their property.
So even if I bought a place and tried to make some extra cash by renting it out on Airbnb,
Right.
I could end up owing a ton of taxes.
It's a possibility, yeah.
Hmm.
The tax rules around short-term rentals are getting stricter,
Okay.
and this recent ruling from the Tax Court of Canada,
Yeah.
it's something potential homeowners need to be aware of.
Wow. This is making the whole buying versus renting decision feel even more complex.
It definitely adds another layer.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the broader economic context. You know, that report we saw about creditors bidding to take ownership of properties held by insolvent real estate companies,
Yeah.
that's a sign that there's some financial instability in the market.
Okay. Now that definitely throws another wrench into things.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's some pretty serious forces at play here that could impact the value of my investment.
Right.
So with all these risks, is Minogue still saying it's a good time to buy? Or is he changing his tune a little?
It makes you wonder.
I'm really curious to hear more about his take on all of this.
Yeah, me too.
Let's dig into that a bit more.
Okay, sounds good. So we've talked about some potential downsides, like those IRD penalties
Right.
and the changing landscape for Airbnb hosts.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that Minogue's core argument
Right.
revolves around the idea of building equity.
Okay.
What stands out to you about that concept?
Honestly, the idea of actually owning a piece of the pie,
Yeah.
it's appealing. You know,
Sure.
when you're renting, it's like you're just throwing money into a void.
Totally.
But with home ownership, you're building something for yourself.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And Minogue really emphasizes that.
Yeah.
As you pay down your mortgage each month,
Uh-huh.
you're increasing your ownership stake in your home.
Okay.
And that ownership stake is called equity.
Right.
And it's like forced savings in a way.
Okay, so instead of paying my landlord's mortgage,
Yeah.
I'm paying down my own, and that builds up my equity over time.
Exactly. And that equity can be leveraged for other things down the line.
Okay.
Like, let's say you want to renovate your kitchen
Yeah.
or bathroom.
Yeah.
You could tap into that equity to finance those improvements.
Oh, interesting.
Or if you decide to sell your place in the future,
Yeah.
you could potentially use that equity as a down payment on a bigger property.
Oh.
It can give you a lot more financial flexibility and open up opportunities that you wouldn't have as a renter.
That's a pretty compelling argument.
It is.
It's like you're building a foundation
Yeah,
for your financial future.
totally.
But there's still that little voice in my head saying, what if the market crashes?
Yeah.
You know, like those insolvent real estate companies we were talking about earlier?
Mhm.
Does that mean the whole system is about to implode?
Well, it's not necessarily a sign of an impending crash,
Okay.
but it does indicate that there are some underlying vulnerabilities in the market.
Right.
Minogue doesn't really address that directly in his materials, does he?
No, not really.
He seems pretty bullish on real estate overall,
He does.
but he's also a realtor, so it's kind of his job to be optimistic about the market.
True. And to be fair, real estate has historically been a pretty good long-term investment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to acknowledge that there are risks involved,
Right.
and no investment is guaranteed.
Exactly.
It's about finding a balance between Minogue's optimism
Yeah.
and a healthy dose of skepticism.
That's a great point.
So how do I make sense of all of this? It feels like a seesaw of good news and bad news.
It is a lot to digest.
Yeah.
And it's totally understandable to feel a bit overwhelmed.
I am.
Remember, you mentioned you wanted to understand if Minogue's advice applies to you specifically, right?
Yeah. That's the whole point of this deep dive.
Okay.
I need to figure out if this stop renting thing is the right move for me right now,
Yeah,
or if it's better to wait and see how things shake out.
exactly. And that's a really personal decision. There's
Yeah.
no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right?
But I think a good starting point is to assess your own financial situation and your comfort level with risk.
Okay, that makes sense. So before I even think about buying,
Yeah,
I need to have a solid grasp on my finances.
absolutely. Do you have a budget?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, how's your debt load?
It's manageable.
Okay, do you have any savings set aside for a down payment?
I'm working on it.
Okay, good. Those are all foundational questions to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Minogue actually has some great resources on his website.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he does, to help you get started with that.
Okay.
He even has a free downloadable budget tracker.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check that out.
Cool.
I'm pretty good at budgeting,
Mm.
but a little extra guidance never hurts.
Never hurts.
What about this whole getting pre-approved for a mortgage thing?
Oh, yeah.
I hear people talking about that a lot.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
Getting pre-approved for a mortgage is a great idea.
Okay.
It means a lender has reviewed your financial situation
Uh-huh.
and given you a conditional approval for a certain loan amount.
Okay.
It helps you understand how much you can realistically borrow
Oh, okay.
and gives you a clearer picture of what you can afford.
Right.
Plus, it shows sellers that you're a serious buyer,
Oh, okay.
which can give you an edge in a competitive market.
So it's like getting a sneak peek into what you can afford
Yeah,
before you even start house hunting.
exactly.
That's a really good tip.
It is. And it can save you a lot of heartache down the line.
Oh, for sure.
You don't want to fall in love with a place only to find out that you can't actually afford it.
Okay, so get my finances in order.
Yeah.
Get pre-approved for a mortgage.
Uh-huh.
What else should I be thinking about?
Well, remember that the market is constantly changing.
True.
Those interest rate hikes we talked about
Yeah.
are making borrowing more expensive right now.
Right.
But some experts are predicting that rates could start decreasing in 2025.
Oh, wow. So that's something to consider too.
Yeah.
If rates go down, buying could become more affordable.
It's true.
But waiting means potentially missing out on some good deals right now,
Right.
especially with those price drops in certain condo segments.
Totally.
It's a tough call.
It is. There's no guarantee which way the market will swing.
Right.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Even if you're not ready to buy right this second,
Yeah.
you can start planning and preparing for homeownership now.
Okay, so it's like laying the groundwork.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not quite ready to break ground on a new house just yet.
Yeah.
What are some things I can do to get the ball rolling?
Well, we've already talked about getting your finances in order
Right.
and getting pre-approved for a mortgage.
Yeah.
Those are great first steps.
Right.
You can also start researching different neighborhoods,
Oh, okay.
looking at property listings online,
Right.
and even attending some open houses just
Okay.
to get a feel for the market.
That's a good idea. I can start picturing myself in different spaces.
Yeah.
And getting a sense of what I like and what I don't like.
Exactly. And as you're doing your research,
Mm-hmm.
keep an eye on interest rates
Okay.
and market trends.
So,
There are tons of great resources online.
Yeah.
And financial experts you can follow to stay informed.
okay, so it's all about being proactive
Yeah,
and staying informed, even if I'm not ready to make a move just yet.
you got it. And remember, this whole homeownership journey is a marathon, not a sprint.
Huh.
There's no need to rush into anything.
Right.
Take your time, do your research, and make a decision that feels right for you.
I really appreciate that perspective.
Yeah,
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement
totally.
of potentially owning a place.
Yeah,
But it's important to stay grounded
right.
and approach it strategically.
Absolutely. It's about making a smart,
Yeah.
informed decision
Right.
that sets you up for success,
Right.
both financially and personally.
So even though Manoj's stop renting and start owning message is appealing,
Yeah,
it's important to view it through the lens of the current market reality.
exactly. His advice might be valid in a different market climate,
Right.
but with rising interest rates,
Mm.
potential IRD penalties,
Right.
and some uncertainty about the future, it's essential to proceed with caution.
Okay, so it's not a simple yes or no answer.
It's not.
It's about weighing the pros and cons and figuring out what makes the most sense for me personally.
You got it. And that's where a deep dive like this comes in handy.
It does.
It forces you to think critically
Yeah.
and really engage with the nuances
Right.
of a complex issue.
I'm definitely feeling more informed
Good.
and empowered to make a decision that's right for me.
Good. I'm glad.
So, what have we learned about Manoj's advice so far? Is it totally off base, or is there still some merit to it?
I think his core message of building equity
Yeah.
and viewing homeownership as a long-term investment is solid.
Right.
But it's crucial to balance that with
Yeah.
a realistic understanding of
Yeah.
the current market dynamics,
Right.
potential risks,
Yeah.
and your personal financial situation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not about blindly following advice,
Right.
but about integrating it into a broader understanding
Yeah.
of the bigger picture.
Exactly.
So what's the next step in this deep dive journey? Where do we go from here?
That's a great question. Let's explore that.
So we've explored Manoj's stop renting and start owning philosophy. We've dug into the current market trends.
Yep.
We talked about some of the risks and financial considerations of homeownership. But I still have one big question.
What's that?
Is now the right time to buy, or should I wait?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And